The best memories aren't just made, they're crafted. Threaded with significant details that become inextricably interwoven. For a moment that defines the time and becomes timeless. This is Brooks Brothers. Explore the latest in unparalleled quality and craftsmanship.
Please welcome to the stage Senior Director of Digital Marketing at Brooks Brothers, Andrea Silva, and Senior Director, Client Partner at Tenuity, Amanda Gerard.
Awesome. Yeah, super excited to have Andrea Silva today from Brooks Brothers to talk a little bit about the evolution of the Brooks Brothers media program and talk full funnel. Andrea, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the history of the company?
Absolutely. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys for having me, and thank you for everybody for joining. As Amanda said, my name is Andrea Silva. I am the Senior Director of Digital Marketing for Brooks Brothers. So I cover off on some aspects of CRM and obviously paid media. For those of you that are not familiar with Brooks Brothers, we are a 200-year-old brand. We have, I think we want to go to the, yeah, perfect. We have a very loyal customer base. Most people who are introduced to Brooks Brothers will tell an anecdote like, oh, my dad took me there for my first suit, after I graduated college, or, oh, I got my wedding tuxedo from Brooks Brothers. If there's any other retailers in the audience, obviously, COVID had a big impact on, retailers. Brooks was no exception. And so I joined Brooks Brothers about 3 years ago. And at that time, we were purchased by Spark, coming out of bankruptcy. And, we needed to make sure that, our customers knew that we were still here. And at the same time, we recognized that, post-COVID was going to be a different world, and we needed to think about new, maybe different, customers. When I originally got to Brooks, we were very focused on, more mid-bottom funnel. So, DR, performance, what's your ROAS, demand, all those things that I see a couple people like shaking their head like, yes, we know. But post-COVID, we recognize that not only did we need to tell our existing customers we are still here and we're back in full force, but as I said before, we needed to attract a new customer. And so bottom of funnel and performance is not sustainable. And that is when we started to kind of have these conversations about needing to change our marketing mix and needing to think about full funnel. And full funnel obviously involves awareness media. ROAS is going to continue to play a big part, when you think about full funnel media, but working with a leadership team, working with your leadership team to identify how you're going to measure things differently, right? Because you're going to have to measure things differently. And obviously with the partnership between Brooks Brothers and Tenuity, before we kind of dipped our toe in, we had some conversations about, how were we going to measure this? And we'll talk a little bit, as we get in terms of some of the results and how we did measure the OTT spot for success.
I'm just thinking about, again, the history of, the brand and needing to get younger, expand to new audiences. Can you speak a little bit about that actual core customer who is, historically that core consumer of Brooks, and then the audience that you were trying to reach?
Yeah, for sure. So as I said, 200-year-old brand. So as you would imagine, our customer base tends to skew a little older. So our current core customer is about 55 plus. The female version is actually 57 plus, and she tends to be purchasing less for herself and more for other members of the household. we realized that we needed to look at a younger audience. And so I'm sure if I ask everybody here, like, what does a younger audience mean? Everyone's gonna be like, Gen Z. But yeah, that's
Not exactly
us.
for us,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, not quite. Eventually, hopefully. But we're really thinking more about, millennials, male and female, millennial mindset, 25 to 44, has some income, because Brooks Brothers is more of an upscale, not quite luxury, but upscale brand. Yes, exactly. And so, what we needed to make sure was that we didn't make the 55 and plus, we didn't alienate them, right? So how do you start to talk to two very different demographics, especially when you have to try to do full funnel? And so really what we did was we started to do some testing with awareness media in paid social. The benefit of that was we could really target who we were trying to reach. So as our photography started to gear more towards our target demographic, our campaign shoots had younger folks involved, and it enabled us to make sure that we weren't giving the wrong message to the wrong consumer. And so yes, we tested a ton of platforms. And I think we can all agree the great thing about being in digital is that you don't need a ton of money to test into something, right? And this is also a great way if you've got the challenges of brand and awareness is owned by someone other than yourselves. This is also a great way to kind of take the leadership team or your C-suite along to understand, the value of doing full funnel and the value of awareness. I think we probably tested, 6 or 7 different platforms.
In a year?
Yeah.
If not less.
And so TikTok, Reddit, YouTube Shorts, Pinterest, I'm sure I'm missing a bunch, but it really was, working with Tenuity to identify the right content, the right audience, and the right platform.
Yep.
And it does take a little bit of testing to figure that out, right? So what you're expecting to see on TikTok is not what somebody who's on Reddit is going to be looking for or expecting. And so, after, as you said, Amanda, like a year, right, we realized that we kind of hit like a plateau. So, all of the paid social media platforms, we're all dealing with increased costs, increased competition. And so the question was, okay, well, now what? Like, how do we continue to reach, new audiences?
Yep.
And that is when we started talking about OTT. And Amanda, you probably can attest to the fact that we were a little hesitant because Brooks Brothers does not have huge budgets or unlimited money. And I think Courtney from my team is here and she'll attest to the fact that we don't have big teams and we don't have the resources to shoot, a television commercial. That's not the expertise that we have in-house. So I'm like, well, how are we going to do this? How are we going to afford it? And
where do we start,
And where do we start? I think that's actually a great point because it does feel like overwhelming. Like I'm going to go and shoot, a streaming commercial. Like, what do I do? And actually, we worked very closely with Tenuity, their creative team, and we were able to, deliver not 1, but 2 spots. I think it was like 4 or 6 weeks at the most from start to finish. I think that they did a great job in terms of kind of taking care of all of the logistics and the legwork. And so myself, our creative director, our team, we could focus on making sure that the message was right, making sure that the product that we were featuring was what we wanted to share with, the millennial target. We could focus on making sure that, the models that were used were the right models.
Voiceover, everything.
And we were able to do, like I said, in 4 to 6 weeks, produced 2 spots on budget, on time, and had it in the market.
Awesome. And again, we've got a little bit of behind the scenes footage here
Yes.
too, that Andrea was present for.
Which was super fun.
Yes.
I'm not gonna lie, like I felt cool being on like a, because like maybe you've done photography shoots, or I haven't done a commercial since, well, probably since you were in grammar school. So it's been a long time, but it was great. And again, you can see from the behind the scenes, like the location was great. We had our creative director on staff. We had a stylist on staff. The director and the Tenuity team that we worked with, it really was surprisingly stress-free, which
says a lot for creative.
I don't want to say that too loud because but it was surprisingly stress-free, and the results, we were extremely happy with the results.
Yeah, and we'll get into the results in a second, but I also think, again, great campaigns, great creative are built on great partnerships, and I think, Andrea and the team, Courtney, everyone here, really partnered with us hand in hand through the entire process, and I think that's why it was so successful.
That actually is a good point as well, because I think, we do trust, we have a good relationship, and I think that is also an important aspect, because, sometimes if your agency brings something to you and maybe there's not as much trust or confidence, you might not be willing to maybe take the risk. Whereas I think because we work together, that full year, like try this, try that.
Yeah.
I think you guys even,
testing of platforms as well.
Yes.
This is really an evolution of, our total testing plan.
And even some of the testing that we did with TikTok, like we don't have the resources to create that much content, ongoing to run a campaign. So we worked with you guys to get some of that content created. And I think you have to have trust. And I think the other thing that really helped is that, the Tenuity team understood some of the challenges that we had, right? Whether it was resources or whether it was kind of educating people internally around, the value of awareness. Like I would make jokes about like, well, if we don't do it, then we'll see what's going to happen.
If not today, tomorrow.
Yes, exactly. But that clearly doesn't fly with, leadership teams.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, getting into some of the results, I know, again, measurement too, just in the planning of this campaign, it really was 4 to 6 weeks, and that included not only creative production, but also full measurement plans as well. But love for you to highlight some of the specific stats from the campaign.
Yeah, for sure. And so I do think that, I think I mentioned earlier, and I know this sounds like a no-brainer, but I think sometimes we get caught up in, our day-to-day and what we're doing. But if this is something that you want to try, kick off, it is really important to establish how you're going to determine if this is successful prior to kicking it off, right? So that was one of the things that, we did talk about with, our leadership team. We talked about how we want to look at ROAS and demand differently with this incorporated into, the spend. But then we also said, okay, we expect to see a lift in conversion, we expect to see a lift in sessions or visitors to the site, and we expect to see increase in revenue, right? And so, as you can see on the screen, we did see a 20% lift in our conversion rate. We were able to do that, or we were able, to determine that based on a Halo study that we agreed with Tenuity before the OTT project kicked off was something that we would do. We were able to reach 514,000 households. And again, the way that we did the media buy, through programmatic, really enabled us to target, again, that millennial, right? Making sure that we're
streaming. Yeah.
Yeah, make sure that we're talking to the right people, the people that we want to introduce our brand to. And I think, we saw a 40% uptick in revenue or demand while the campaign was running. And then we saw a 27% lift in visits. And so the interesting thing was that the lift in demand was in our other paid media channels. And so this kind of takes us full circle to full funnel, right? Because if we had just done the OTT spot and we just did the halo effect, maybe we would have said like, okay, this was, definitely a win. We saw all of the right KPIs, we saw all the right metrics, success. But I think the fact that we saw such like a lift in performance on our other paid media channels demonstrated that we were actually full funnel, right? We were introducing customers in a new way, so on different screens, yes, phones and laptops, but also actually, on a screen in their living room, in their bedroom. And I think, we were able to identify that once they saw that, now they're on social media, whether it's Reddit, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, and they're seeing similar content. And that was another thing that was important. We really wanted to make sure that the commercial, the OTT spot, was very cohesive with our fall campaign. That's one of the reasons that we brought our creative director.
In-house creative.
Right. Yeah. So we do all of our, our campaign photography, in-house. And so now you see the OTT spot. Then you're on Meta or you're on TikTok, and now you're seeing more creative talking about Brooks Brothers. Then you go and you search, Brooks Brothers suit or Brooks Brothers sweater. And now we've invested more dollars into those particular paid search categories, knowing that that is what we're focused on, not only in OTT, but also in the balance of our campaign. And so, for me, that was a real selling point for us to continue to do top of funnel, in addition to the results that, we're seeing on the screen here.
Yeah, and I know that so much planning really went into this campaign last year, and especially ahead of holiday. And I know it, was a tough year for a lot of retailers. So I'm curious, how did you see this playing into our overall holiday strategy, the performance?
Yeah, great question. By show of hands, how many retail brands? So I don't know if it was for you guys, but last year was definitely a challenging holiday season. And, Brooks actually did better than we expected. And I talked a little bit about, that we launched this in September. Again, with the notion of, I want to fill top of funnel. Because by the time we get to November, I want to make sure that a whole bunch of new people, millennials, are familiar with our brand. So now when they start seeing, the same Black Friday ads that everybody else is doing, the same promotions that everybody else is doing, they've kind of been on a little bit of a journey with us in the sense of interacting with us prior to that period. So now when they're ready to kind of get a gift for somebody, grab something for themselves for, New Year's Eve, they've now been introduced, to Brooks Brothers. And so I think it definitely put us in a better spot preparing for holiday season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that whole narrative really did start with the social testing that we did in years prior to introduce millennials, and then it really peaked with the OTT campaign. And again, we're not stopping there. So Andrea, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what is on the horizon for Brooks. I know we've got a big year ahead of us, so would love to hear a little bit more.
Sorry, I had to take a little sip.
Try to talk a little bit more.
So I think I mentioned earlier, anecdotally, that a lot of people talk about their first suit from Brooks Brothers, that sort of thing. And so, we were, again, trying to think about what is the next way that we're going to reach a new audience, right? What better time to introduce somebody to a brand than, potentially one of the most important days of their lives, which is, when they're getting married. And so I believe you guys actually brought the idea to us. And one of the challenges, I guess, we have as it relates to marketing tuxedos and suits to men and weddings is that we're not a bridal business. So we talk about occasion dressing, and we sometimes struggle how to talk to our women buyers around these types of things and how to talk to men buyers around these types of things. And I think when you guys brought the knot to us, we're like, well, we don't have wedding dresses. And then I think, I don't know who had the epiphany, but we were kind of like, let's narrow it down. Like, this is our sweet spot. If we can make somebody look good, you feel good when you look good on one of the most important days of their lives, chances are they're going to remember the brand, right? Somebody asks you like, oh, your tux was great or your suit was great, like, where'd you get Brooks Brothers? So I think once we identified that this is an opportunity to really hone in on our sweet spot, so other than unlike our OTT opportunity, which was very broad, right? Men, women, not specific to any occasion. This gives us an opportunity to introduce Brooks,
Like hone in.
to new customers, yeah. And so, with the, media buy, specifically with the knot, we know we're gonna be talking to brides, for the most part, right? Like, but knowing that we're targeting, 25 to 44, we know that, millennial males take a greater interest in what they're wearing and how they look. And so even though the first touch might be the bride, we're really confident that the subsequent touches will be the groom, the groomsmen. And it's this notion of, dress your whole bridal party, or groomsmen, not whole bridal party, but dress your groomsmen and yourself. We've got a promo offer. We also do made to measure in stores, which is a custom suit. And so again, if you're gonna spring for a custom made suit or a custom tux, what better day to do that than on your wedding day? And so this does not start until mid-June, which puts us again in a great position for fall weddings. September, October, and I'm excited, to see how it's going to perform. And I think, again, the other thing is that it won't just be this piece of the puzzle, right? We are going to make sure, again, that it's full funnel. We're actually going to be leveraging some CRM here. So part of the media buy is some lead gen. Yeah. Right, so somebody will be signing up for the knot because they're planning their wedding, and there'll be several partners that have a promotion, and we will then get email addresses, and we'll start a life cycle through email with this customer. We'll know when their wedding date is, and so we'll welcome them. We'll give them the coupon code, and then we will also have subsequent emails. So 4 months before their wedding, we'll talk about the different types of suits for different types of weddings. A month before the wedding, it's like dressing for different types of honeymoons. Are you going to a city? Are you going to the beach? And then about a week after the wedding, the final email before they kind of are brought into the regular kind of business as usual email marketing list will be, okay, it's back to work time. Here are some great things that you can wear now that you're, newly married and feeling spiffy. And then we're also going to leverage all of our other channels, again, to reinforce this message about Brooks is the place to go for your wedding attire for, the groom and the groomsmen.
Yeah, and I think that's great points. And I think, again, it really is all in the details. And I think, again, all in the touch points and making sure that, again, we are hitting them in multiple channels. I think just also going back to the OTT campaign as well, could you talk a little bit about the QR codes and a little bit of that we did there? I think that's, just around all the details.
So we were, we were talking about measurement, and the team came to us and recommended leveraging SparkBack. And what that enabled us to do was to put a QR code on some of the spots, depending on where they were being shown. And we exceeded SparkBack's benchmark for number of scans. So it was a real-time way to say, okay, we reached 514,000 households, but people were actually interested enough to pick up their phone
In real time.
and scan the QR code, right? And so it was just another way for us to measure awareness media, which again, we all know is definitely, challenging for sure.
Awesome. Before we wrap up, would love to hear again any key takeaways, next steps, or just highlights from the past year and the learnings.
Yeah, so I know there's some stuff on there, but invest in full funnel. And again, I know for some of us it's hard because brand and awareness are sometimes owned somewhere else. But I think if you can approach it from like a crawl, walk, run perspective like we did, where you don't maybe jump right to an OTT spot, or maybe you've done your testing and that's the next big thing for you. But I think, understanding that you have to take your customer on the journey, that think about your own experience when you're, consuming media. There's so much out there that you have to make sure that you have a way to cut through the clutter.
Yeah, meet them where they are.
Meet them where they are, and spend the time to figure out what's the right message, what's the right content, who am I targeting, and what's the right platform.
Yeah.
Because there is there's definitely art and science, right? But you're not going to nail it the first time. And like I said before, the great thing about digital is that, even if it's not a super success, you can quickly learn from it and move on. I think, was it Christine this morning that Christina was saying, like, if you don't succeed, try again. And that's really, what it is, in terms of investing in full funnel. You're not going to hit it out of the park the first time. And, you take what you learn and reiterate on that.
I think that's what's been so great about the partnership too, is that again, you trust us enough to let us bring ideas,
and I think
let us test and learn.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because I mentioned earlier, I was like, well, I was kind of like, can we do OTT? Can I afford it? And the Tenuity team's like, yes, you can, and we're going to help you. And I think had we not, done all of that testing, had that relationship in the year prior, we might not have taken the risk.
Yep.
Especially because when we finally decided to pull the trigger and go for it, we didn't have a lot of time. Like, we wanted it to be in the market in September because we wanted to leverage, September, October of the campaign running, again, to fill that top of our funnel, introduce new customers going into, holiday. I think the other thing is, and again, not knowing, how the various folks in the audience, how your organization is set up, but I think, one of the ways to be able to take some of that awareness, responsibility or ownership is through, starting with paid social or starting small, because then it's a media buy. And you're just leveraging brand assets to help support, the brand campaign. And so that is another thing that you can leverage to kind of
Test the waters.
Test the waters, yeah. Like, okay, I spent X. I think we're good. These are the results. But it is going, it can be challenging to, especially if you've been very performance focused, especially if your organization is very demand, ROAS, KPI, focused. It really is important to make sure that your leadership team, is along for the ride. And part of that is making sure that you establish what does success look like when we're done. And so, sometimes you're making that case to the leadership team, to the brand team, but being able to rely on, a good partner to help you do that. I think that was the other thing. I'm like, I need this, I need this, I need this. They're asking me this. And so like all of those things while we were trying to, pull everything together, I think really worked. And then I just think the last thing is, digital is changing every day. And there are more ways than the current ways that you are currently reaching customers to reach new customers. That's not to say that you're not reaching customers, and that's not to say that we're not all successful. But again, it's, and I'm going to use such a cliche, I'm sorry, thinking outside the box a little bit and be willing to take a calculated risk. It's not like let's throw tons of money out the door or out the window and let's cross our fingers. But it's okay to take a risk and to try something new. It's a great way to introduce your brand, your product to new customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Andrea will be around for at least the next few hours. She's got her son's prom tonight.
Senior prom.
Yes, and then we're not going to keep you too long. We do have lunch starting. So
Yes.
yeah, thank you for the time, everyone.